I'm a very large proponent of Alaska. I was born and raised in Fort Yukon. I talk a lot about how we can grow our own economy, how we can be more self-sustaining, how we can do things on our own and stop being either owned or bought or borrowed or used or whatever really horrible terminology you want to hear when you're talking about the Alaska economy, because I think so much of the Alaska economy is not really driven by Alaskans. And it's one of the reasons that I see such great potential in the concept of the Alaska Ocean Cluster or the blue economy, because I think now is the time, and the future really is ours. If we choose to grab this thing and run with it, we can accomplish amazing things and be less reliant on people from the outside. You know, I often talk about Alaska being a colony. I still think we are a colony. What is a colony? A colony is a place where you go to get natural resources. You take those natural resources, you take them somewhere else, you develop them, you generate more income and more revenue out of them. And what do you leave back in the place that you've colonized? You leave a few jobs, you leave some money, but the majority of the wealth, the majority of the ideas, the majority of the brain power, it all comes from and goes somewhere else. And I'm not saying all that because I'm a downer on Alaska. I like Alaska. I was born and raised here. I think this place is pretty cool. I've got a few statistics that I'd like to share about Alaska and how wonderful I think it is. Alaska is a place for big ideas, and we have a whole lot of firsts. We have some great entrepreneurs and folks that have really stepped up and done wonderful things. Now, this has nothing to do with us, but Alaska is the biggest state. It was going to be the biggest state whether we were here or not. 663,000 square miles. We have the tallest mountain at 20,310 feet. We have the most lakes. Alaska's got 3 million lakes, more lakes than any other state in the country. We have the longest coastline. We have the biggest fisheries. We have the greatest oil and gas potential. We have the largest zinc mine, and we even have the most powerful governor in the country. That's a pretty big deal. All of those really wrap into what it means to be Alaska and why this initiative is so important. But our failing has really been too much reliance on government spending and too much reliance on a single sector of the economy that it's been really good for Alaska, don't get me wrong. We would not be where we are today if it wasn't for oil and gas. And so it's an important sector. Government spending has been really important for Alaska. The military has been important for Alaska. But if we're going to be successful as a state, we cannot simply rely on government spending and the oil and gas industry. It's a highly volatile, both of those really are highly volatile, not really very dependable. We've got to go and look at developing our own economy. That means each and every one of you who are from Alaska and who are working here and intend to stay here, that's me. Is there anybody else out there fit into that category? There's a bunch of you out there. So you all need jobs, your kids need jobs, and those jobs should be built locally. The money should come home, the money should stay home, and as a matter of fact, we should invest our money into other places instead of having folks doing all the investment here into Alaska. So we've got to stop relying on this single sector economy. We need a strong and sustainable economy for Alaska, and it has to come from the blue sector. The blue sector is going to, we will develop the blue sector by forging partnerships, by creating opportunities with entrepreneurs, with science, with education, and visionaries. And there's lots of them in this building today. I've had great conversations with folks who are going to help us to make this thing a reality. One way that Alaskans are working to diversify our economy is with the Alaska Ocean Cluster Initiative, as Joel has already pointed out. And this looks at our potential and creates opportunities. And there have been some great opportunities that have already been created, and we're looking at creating more in the future. Ocean clusters that have developed across Europe have been really successful. They're mastering this potential. They are networking in innovation, creating economies of scale, and cooperating for success like never seen before. Iceland is the perfect example, and I have had the privilege of working in Iceland a lot, actually. I was the Gwich'in Council International representative to the Arctic Council and got to spend quite a few years traveling to and from Iceland. And what I found about Iceland is they're very much like Alaska. They're isolated. They had to, at least at the time I was traveling, it's a lot less this way now, but they imported everything. They relied on other folks. They have other governments sort of trying to control them, and investments coming from places that you don't necessarily want investments, but you take them because what else are you going to do? So Alaska and Iceland actually shared a lot in common, and what I saw over time as as time went on is Iceland taking things into their own hands and doing more. And the ocean cluster is a perfect example. Iceland developed this thing I think in 2011, and it has really taken off and has really been a success. And it's really changing how they do business. So their mission is to create value, to connect people, to share knowledge, and provide services. That all sounds pretty easy, but unless you have a core structure like the Alaska Ocean Cluster Initiative focusing on that, you're not going to pull it off. And probably the coolest thing ever is that their ocean cluster had one of the best goals I think I've ever heard of in my life, and that's a goal of no waste. Could you imagine the fish industry or any other industry that has no scales going into the garbage, no slime going into the garbage, no blood going into the garbage, no fins going into the garbage, no bones going into the garbage, using 100% of that. Now, they're not at 100% yet, but that's their goal. And they're getting really close, and that needs to be a goal of ours. And the reason for that is because we need to maximize the revenue that we're going to generate from our blue economy, so we can not only benefit the economy of Alaska, but so that we don't take more from the ocean than we need to. Participants in Iceland's ocean cluster say that it's created opportunities by opening doors that they didn't even know were there. And this is the big thing for Alaska. We have people scattered all over the state, innovators, people that are visionaries, very thoughtful about what they want to do. And it isn't that Alaskans don't like working together. We actually really like working together. The problem is they're scattered in these hundreds of communities around Alaska and they don't even know what other people are doing or other people are thinking. And what Joel and what Karen at BSFA are going to pull off with this thing is they're creating a mechanism to pull people together so that they can share ideas and so that they can build on each other's successes. And that, I think, is really fantastic. It doesn't happen in many other industries. And it really has been tough here naturally because of competition and because of the business model we have and because of how people are separated across Alaska. I think this is huge for Alaska, and I think Alaska needs this. We have great entrepreneurship and innovation in Alaska, and too often the things that I've already mentioned, our size, the distance, the nature of business and competition, we often work in silos, and that limits our potential and creativity. But why does this all matter to you? It matters because the surface of the earth is 71% water. Most of that is in ocean. And Alaska's got an awfully giant ocean all the way around us. We have 5 oceans in the world, right? And most of them are untapped for the potential that they have. The ocean holds 1.3 billion cubic kilometers of water. It holds over 99% of the area that can hold in life forms. Let those statistics sink in for a little while and think how the world, how the country, how Europe, none of it has barely scratched the surface. Clearly, we're relying on the ocean, but we're barely scratching the surface. Alaska hasn't scratched the surface. I think it's time for Alaska to start scratching. I think the ocean, if managed wisely, can basically be the global PFD. And we can provide a natural capital to the greatest wealth, the most reliable food supply, never-ending energy, entertainment, and jobs. The blue economy potential in Alaska is massive. Imagine food with less land competition, clothing, oils, medicines. Are you aware that in the past 30 years, 20,000 marine biochemical substances have been identified? Very few from the Arctic and not that many from Alaskan waters. We should be involved in that. National defense, there's great potential for the Navy and the Coast Guard to expand in our part of the world. Minerals, oil and gas, even carbon sequestration potential to generate income for the state, and energy development with tidal, wave, wind, and oil and gas. And like I've said, we haven't even scratched the surface yet. Now, the ocean cluster concept is not new in Alaska. However, great strides have been made, as I said, with Karen Gillis and Joel, who just introduced me. We have to embrace this idea of the ocean cluster. We need to develop our blue economy, because if we don't, someone else will. And once again, tremendous wealth will be created from Alaska's resources by companies outside of Alaska, while we are sidelined with jobs, which are good, and taxes, which pay the bills, instead of ownership. But I think we can have all three. I think we need to have ownership, jobs, and the tax and taxes. If Alaska is going to thrive and be self-sustaining, we have to decolonize. We've got to make products in Alaska, and we have to be more self-sustaining. Thank you very much.